Or when you go silent, her mind goes crazy, not because she is weak, not because she doesn't have control, but because silence is one of the most powerful weapons in human connection. You see, words can be explained, they can be twisted, they can be denied. But silence forces the other person to face their own thoughts. Silence is one of the most unsettling forces in human interaction because it takes away the certainty people crave. Or when you stop responding, she is left to wrestle with her own thoughts, and those thoughts multiply rapidly. Or uncertainty begins to creep in because silence creates a vacuum where words should have been. In that vacuum, her imagination builds scenarios, stories, and assumptions. Or this happens not because she is weak, but because the human brain fears the unknown. Or the conclusion here is that silence makes her uncomfortable by denying her clarity and forcing her into speculation. The mind always seeks closure. Or when a conversation ends unfinished, or when attention suddenly disappears, the human brain begins to replay everything that happened, searching for clues to explain the silence. Or this constant overthinking keeps her mind running in circles, questioning every detail of what was said or done. What once felt solid now feels uncertain, and what was once predictable now feels unstable. In this state, her thoughts grow restless. The conclusion here is that silence acts like an open loop, or pushing her to obsess until she finds an answer. Psychologists often note that uncertainty triggers anxiety far more than negative certainty does. For instance, if someone tells you directly they are angry, you know where you stand, but when they go silent, you are left in the dark. Or that unknown possibility is often worse than hearing bad news because the brain invents countless scenarios, each more troubling than the last. When you go silent, she feels the weight of that possibility and her mind spirals. The conclusion here is that silence is powerful because it magnifies fear of the unknown. Or what makes silence so potent is that it shifts the balance of power in communication. Words can be challenged, argued, or defended, but silence leaves nothing to attack, or it forces the other person to turn inward and examine themselves instead of debating you. In relationships, this lack of reaction feels like rejection, or even if you never said a word, that rejection plants seeds of insecurity and doubt. The conclusion here is that silence transfers the focus back onto her, or making her question herself more deeply than your words ever could. Another reason silence drives her crazy is that it feels unnatural in emotional situations. Or when someone cares, they usually explain, justify, or respond. But when you do not engage, the silence itself feels louder than any argument could. Or it suggests something important is unsaid, and the mystery of that absence keeps her hooked. She begins to interpret Fred's silence as meaning more than it actually does, or which intensifies her emotional reaction. The conclusion here is that silence stands out in moments where words are expected, amplifying its impact on her mind. Or the human brain dislikes gaps in narratives. When part of a story is missing, we fill it with our own imagination, often creating scenarios worse than reality. Or your silence becomes that missing part of the story, and she fills it with doubts, fears, or insecurities. Instead of hearing your side, or she becomes trapped in her own mental projections. This projection makes her think more about you, even when she doesn't want to. Or the conclusion here is that silence pulls her into overthinking by forcing her to write her own explanations in the gaps you leave behind. Silence also disrupts emotional rhythm. Or when conversations flow, emotions stay regulated. But when you suddenly withdraw, it creates a break in rhythm that feels jarring. Or that break unsettles her and makes her wonder if something has changed in the connection. It forces her to think more intensely about the relationship and about you, or as she tries to restore balance. Because she cannot control your silence, she feels powerless. The conclusion here is that silence disrupts emotional balance, or leaving her desperate to resolve the disconnection and restore harmony. Or it's important to recognize that silence works not by manipulation, but by triggering natural psychological responses. Everyone struggles when faced with uncertainty, but in relationships, it feels personal. When you go silent, she experiences that uncertainty more intensely because she has invested emotionally, or the silence feels like a threat threat to her emotional security, and so she reacts with heightened imagination and over-analysis. Or the conclusion here is that silence has such a powerful effect because it threatens a sense of stability in the relationship, making her mind restless. Ultimately, or silence is not just the absence of words, it is the presence of mystery. By withholding immediate responses, you let her mind do the work, and in doing so, or you remain in control. She is the one overthinking, questioning, and replaying scenarios while you remain composed. Or this dynamic makes silence one of the most powerful tools in communication and attraction. The conclusion here is that silence leaves her mind chasing answers, or proving that in many situations, silence speaks louder than any explanation you could ever give. Value in relationships is often measured by availability, and silence is the first signal that you are not endlessly available. When you withhold words or attention, she begins to notice the space you once filled, or that absence makes her realize the weight of your presence. Humans often overlook what is constantly there, but the moment it disappears, its importance becomes undeniable. Or silence highlights your worth by creating contrast between being present and being absent. Or the conclusion here is that silence increases value by forcing her to see how much you matter when you are no longer instantly accessible. Attention operates like a currency, and the rarer it becomes, the higher its value. If you give unlimited attention, it loses its specialness. But if you step back and go silent, that attention suddenly becomes precious. She begins to crave it more because she cannot get it as easily as before. Just as scarcity drives demand in economics, it also drives emotional desire. By being selective with your attention, you elevate yourself in her perception. The conclusion here is that silence makes your attention scarce, and scarcity naturally raises its value in her eyes. When you are constantly available, predictability sets in, and predictability kills excitement. But when you go silent, you reintroduce unpredictability into the dynamic, she cannot be certain when you will respond, when you will engage, or what you are thinking, and this uncertainty sparks curiosity. The mind is drawn to what it cannot fully predict, and in this way, silence creates anticipation, she starts valuing your words more when they finally arrive because they break the silence. The conclusion here is that silence increases value by turning your words into something she eagerly waits for. Relationships thrive on balance, but when one person is always giving, the balance tilts and value diminishes. Silence corrects that imbalance because it forces her to reflect on her own role. Instead of taking your words for granted, she has to work harder to interpret your silence. This effort shifts some of the energy back onto her, and that investment makes her value you more. The dynamic changes from you chasing her to her questioning herself. The conclusion here is that silence restores balance, ensuring that your presence is respected and not treated as endlessly disposable. One of the strongest psychological triggers of value is the fear of loss, when you withdraw your attention through silence, it plants the seed that she might lose your presence, that fear magnifies your importance because people instinctively value what they think they might lose more than what they already have. Silence subtly reminds her that your presence is not guaranteed, and that realization makes her appreciate it more deeply. The conclusion here is that silence strengthens your perceived value by awakening her fear of losing the access she once enjoyed without effort. Scarcity is not only about physical absence, but also about emotional restraint. When you go silent, you are showing emotional discipline, and that discipline sets you apart. Anyone can speak endlessly, argue, or beg for attention, but few can hold silence with composure. That rare ability elevates your status in her mind because it demonstrates that you are not desperate for her validation, she recognizes that your presence and words are controlled, deliberate, and valuable. The conclusion here is that silence increases your value because it signals emotional strength and control, qualities that are always respected. The paradox of silence is that the less you say, the more meaning she assigns to your presence. Words can be dismissed as exaggerations, but silence cannot be ignored, or it forces her to replay your last actions, your last words, and your last expressions in search of meaning. That mental replay invests her energy into thinking about you, or which increases your significance in her life. The conclusion here is that silence amplifies your value because it keeps you present in her thoughts, or even when you are physically absent or withholding your voice. Another way silence increases value is by making her compete for your attention. When you are always available, or she does not have to put in effort, but silence changes that dynamic. She now has to initiate, ask questions, or seek clarification to break through the silence, or that effort deepens her emotional investment in you, and the more she invests, the more she values the outcome. Or silence therefore creates a subtle chase where she is the one doing the work. Or the conclusion here is that silence raises your value by making her pursue what she once received freely. Ultimately, silence is not about punishment, but about positioning. Or by stepping back, you remind her that your time, words, and energy are not unlimited resources. This shifts how she perceives you from someone ordinary to someone valuable, or someone worth waiting for. Over time, silence teaches her to respect your presence because she has felt the discomfort of your absence, or that respect naturally raises your worth in her eyes and strengthens the connection. Or the conclusion here is that silence makes you more valuable because it transforms your presence into something she never wants to take for granted again. Strength in relationships is not always shown by how much you say, but by how much control you have over yourself when emotions run high. Or many men feel the urge to explain, justify, or argue, but this constant need to respond makes them appear reactive. When you choose silence, or you resist the temptation to over-explain, and that resistance reveals inner strength, you are no longer at the mercy of emotions, but in control of them. Or the conclusion here is that silence demonstrates strength because it reflects discipline, patience, and mastery over emotional impulses. Or control in communication is about choosing when to speak and when not to. Words can be rushed out in anger or desperation, but silence requires conscious effort. Or to remain calm and composed when provoked shows a man is not dependent on external validation. This level of control is rare and therefore respected. Or, instead of looking weak by chasing arguments, you look composed by holding back. She recognizes this difference instantly. Or, the conclusion here is that silence signals powerful control because it shows you decide the rhythm of interaction rather than being controlled by emotions. Or, silence also protects your dignity. When arguments escalate, words often turn into weapons, and regret soon follows. By choosing not to engage every time, or you save yourself from lowering your standards, walking away silently or simply withholding words demonstrates maturity, and maturity is always associated with strength. Or you are not competing in emotional chaos, you are standing above it. This makes you appear more secure in yourself. The conclusion here is that silence upholds your dignity, or proving you do not need to fight with words to demonstrate your self-worth. Another reason silence reflects strength is that it requires confidence in your own value. Or insecure men fear silence because they think if they do not respond, they will be forgotten. Strong men understand their worth does not depend on constant communication. Or by staying silent, you show that you do not need to beg for attention or prove yourself repeatedly. That confidence is magnetic because it is rooted in security rather than fear. Or the conclusion here is that silence demonstrates confidence in your inherent value, making you appear stronger and more attractive. Or silence is also a display of self-control in heated moments. Most conflicts escalate because both parties speak without restraint. But silence diffuses tension by breaking the cycle of reaction. By refusing to add fuel to the fire, you take control of the situation. Or this composure is not weakness, but a form of strength that prevents unnecessary damage. It shows that you prioritize peace and stability over ego-driven battles. Or the conclusion here is that silence shows real control by proving that you can regulate your emotions even when provoked or challenged. Or another aspect of silence's strength is its ability to shift the power dynamic. When you refuse to react, or you place the other person in a position where they must reconsider their own actions. Instead of you chasing their validation, they are left chasing your reaction. Or, this subtle shift makes you the one in control. It is not about dominating, but about refusing to be manipulated emotionally. Or, the conclusion here is that silence flips the dynamic by showing strength in restraint, forcing her to question herself instead of controlling you with emotional pressure. Or, silence also prevents you from looking desperate. Constantly explaining or defending yourself signals insecurity, or while silence suggests you do not feel the need to prove anything, this sends a strong message that your self-worth is not up for debate. Or people respect those who do not over-explain because it signals authority and self-assurance. You remain unshaken by accusations or doubts, which reinforces your strength. Or the conclusion here is that silence guards you against desperation, projecting a powerful image of self, respect, and inner stability that demands recognition. Or restraint is one of the hardest skills to master. Silence embodies restraint perfectly. Anyone can raise their voice or argue endlessly, but only those with true control can remain silent without feeling diminished. This ability distinguishes you as someone who operates on a higher level of emotional intelligence. Or, it takes courage and strength to let silence speak when words are available but unnecessary. The conclusion here is that silence highlights rare self-restraint, or proving you are strong enough to act with wisdom instead of reacting out of impulse. Ultimately, silence is not weakness but controlled strength, or it is a deliberate choice that communicates composure, dignity, and self-respect without a single word. In relationships, this strength is deeply attractive because it reassures her that you are not easily shaken, manipulated, or desperate. Your silence becomes louder than arguments, or proving that control is more powerful than reaction. The conclusion here is that silence reflects the highest form of strength and control, or making her mind restless while you remain centered and unbothered. Curiosity is one of the strongest forces in the human mind, and silence activates it instantly. Or when you withhold your words, she is left guessing about your thoughts, your emotions, and your intentions. This guessing game keeps her mentally engaged with you, or even if she tries to distract herself, curiosity makes her replay conversations, analyze your behavior, and search for hidden meanings. The more she wonders, the more invested she becomes in understanding you. Or the conclusion here is that silence sparks curiosity because it leaves unanswered questions that her mind cannot easily ignore or dismiss. Desire is fueled by mystery, and silence creates that mystery better than anything else. When you do not reveal everything about yourself, you leave space for her imagination to fill in the gaps. Or she begins to fantasize, project, and imagine possibilities that make you more intriguing. Or this sense of unpredictability excites her because people are naturally drawn to what they cannot fully figure out. Instead of losing interest, she becomes more curious about you. The conclusion here is that silence creates mystery, and mystery naturally transforms into desire that keeps her emotionally attached. Or when you constantly talk, you become predictable, but silence breaks that predictability. It interrupts the routine and forces her to wonder what has changed. Or predictability breeds comfort, but it also breeds boredom, and silence disrupts that comfort zone by not giving her every answer immediately. Or you stand apart from others who are always eager to respond. This difference captures her attention and sparks deeper interest. Or the conclusion here is that silence increases your uniqueness by breaking patterns, which makes her desire your presence more strongly than before. Or the human brain is wired to seek closure, but silence denies closure, and this denial creates obsession. She wants to know what you are thinking, but you are not giving it away. Or so she keeps searching. This constant searching leads to greater focus on you. Instead of moving on, she becomes stuck in a loop of curiosity that only intensifies with time. Or each unanswered question pulls her deeper into your orbit. The conclusion here is that silence fuels desire because it withholds closure, or leaving her mind restless and eager for resolution. Silence also makes her feel like there is more beneath the surface. It suggests depth, or as if you are holding secrets or thoughts too powerful to share easily. This sense of hidden depth makes her want to explore you further, or to peel back the layers and discover what you are truly about. People are always more attractive when they seem complex, and silence adds to that complexity. Or it paints you as someone not easily understood. The conclusion here is that silence sparks desire by making you appear deeper and more layered than those who overshare. Or another reason silence creates desire is that it turns your eventual words into rewards. If you stay silent for a time and then finally speak, your words carry more weight. Or she listens more carefully and values them more highly because they were not given freely. This scarcity makes every word more meaningful. Or instead of taking your communication for granted, she learns to treasure it. The conclusion here is that silence transforms your words into something valuable, and when something is valuable, it naturally becomes more desirable and respected. Silence also shifts the dynamic by making her pursue answers. When you are always available, or she does not need to put in effort, but when you step back, she feels compelled to close the gap. She might send more messages, initiate conversations, or try to pull your attention back. This act of pursuit strengthens her emotional investment in you. The more effort she puts in, the more she values the connection. Or the conclusion here is that silence creates desire by placing her in the role of pursuer, which deepens her attachment to you. By refusing to reveal everything immediately, or you make her imagination work harder, her mind begins to paint pictures, sometimes even exaggerating your qualities in ways that make you seem larger than life. Or silence creates room for her to idealize you because there are no constant words to limit her perceptions. The less you reveal, the more she imagines, or an imagination often builds stronger attraction than reality. The conclusion here is that silence fuels desire by letting her imagination enhance your image, or making you seem more compelling and irresistible than constant talking would. Ultimately, silence is not about manipulation, but about allowing curiosity and desire to grow naturally. By holding back, you create space for her to wonder, to imagine, and to chase. Or that space keeps her mentally and emotionally engaged, and it ensures that your presence always carries weight. Instead of being predictable and ordinary, or you become someone intriguing, someone worth thinking about. This ongoing mystery keeps her attached to you far more strongly than endless words could. Or the conclusion here is that silence sparks lasting curiosity and desire, ensuring you remain unforgettable in her mind.